Hi, I'm Ken Howard, and welcome to the Gay Therapy LA podcast. Today, I am recording this episode on Thursday, October 31st of 2019, and it's Halloween, so happy Halloween. Today, I'd like to talk about conquering your fears. This is something that in therapy and to some degree in coaching, when I work with guys, and you know me, I'm the dude, the gay men's therapy specialist for 27 years. I'm really proud of that because, at one point I tell this story that in grad school I told an advisor that I wanted to specialize in working with gay men, and I pretty much insisted on having a placement where I could have the opportunity to work with gay men when she wanted me to work with kids or something that I had no interest in. And I got my way, because it was USC, and USC you pay a lot of money, and you don't always get your way, but you sometimes get your way if you're a pretty assertive student. And she pursed her lips, and she said, "Well, you're going to be a very narrow person." And I always kind of was angry about that, because would she have said that about any other niche, So here I am, this narrow person, 27 years later, being a specialist in gay men's mental health and well-being, as well as research and writing and, podcasting and activism. And you know what? I'm proud of that. I think she's retired now. I kind of looked her up. Part of me wanted to say, to go back to her and say, look, bitch, this has been 27 years of expertise in helping thousands of guys as individuals and couples. And you know what? I'm not narrow. I'm proud. I am as proud as I can be that I have had the opportunity to help guys in the way that I have. And that's what I do, that's what I've been doing, and that's what I plan to do for a while. I might retire at some point, but not anytime soon. So I'm proud of that. It's not Pride. Pride is in June. It's October, but I don't know, just had a proud moment there. I'm happy to help all of you guys. It's really my honor. But one of the things I help guys with that is a very pervasive theme is about fears. The clinical term would be anxiety, generalized anxiety, or adjustment disorder with anxiety. These are things I see a lot. It's about dating, it's about jobs, it's all kinds of stuff. But on the occasion of Halloween, which is called the Gay Christmas, and, we have a lot of fun today. I love Halloween. I love the theatricality of it because I'm kind of an old theater person. And I like stimulation of costumes and ideas and fantasy and abandon and, all kinds of stuff. So I'm kind of jazzed up on Halloween. I don't know about you. Maybe I love Halloween because it's the theatricality of it with costumes and props. Maybe it's my addiction to chocolate. I don't know. There was an author, Peg Alloy, who was an expert on pagan holidays, and she explains that Halloween, or Samhain, as it's sometimes called in the pagan world, which means summer's end, is observed as a celebration of the last harvest of the year before winter. It's also a time to reflect on and honor those who have passed on before us. The idea that on Halloween the veil between the worlds of the living and the dead is said to be at its thinnest on this day, so hence its association with seances and ghosts. And for me, as a mental health professional, I think one could view the Halloween season in October as a time about confronting our fears in this culturally expressed and manifested way. And Halloween really is a uniquely American holiday that's spread all over the world, especially with the commercial influence of just, selling commercial shit, like, light up toys and things like that, which I love. So there is, America's global cultural influence. We export things like Beyonce and Halloween and show tunes and things like that. But if we dork out on some of the clinical stuff about confronting our fears, what better time to do it? I think that by dressing up in costumes and embracing things that are scary and ghoulish, making a sugary feast of it all at a time when the days grow shorter in daylight and green fields and trees start to grow brown, we are confronting and even embracing our fears. Fear is like an internal smoke alarm for our minds. It shrieks and screams as a signal to warn us that the house might be on fire, that we're in danger, that we had better move fast to prevent harm. But sometimes the smoke alarm goes off of fear because we burn the toast and it's nothing to worry about. Our internal fear trigger doesn't know the difference. Its job is simply to give us that warning and scream and shriek. And it's up to us to check out to see if that threat is real. Our instinct to fear is a much older brain function than our cognitive ability to reason out things. In the evolution of humankind, if we didn't have a good sense of fear as a species, we never would have outrun the saber-toothed tigers. But, sometimes in life, in our personal and our professional life, our fears hold us back. And they keep us from the wonderful things that we would have said or done or visited or read or tried or experienced or dared or even could have been. So, when faced with a decision that scares us, we can look at what can happen, what we want to happen, and what will likely happen. We can look to our supportive resources, we can do our homework, our background research, our due diligence, and know pretty much within reason what the outcome will be. Highly predictive power by doing the homework it takes to understand the situation in depth. We need to confront our fears with informed reason. If I enter an airplane and a 4-year-old child is at the controls, reason tells me get off the plane. But if I enter that same plane and I see a trained adult crew in uniforms, I can reasonably place my trust that the trip will be safe. I did another article on gaytherapyla.com that talks about conquering our fears with probability. I admit, I was never much a math guy. I was an English guy. I can proofread better than I can, calculate calculus. But at the same time, I have an appreciation for statistics and probability. What are the odds when you get on a plane that it's going to fall and crash out of the sky and that's your last day on Earth and you're going to be smashed to bits as the plane hits the ground? Okay, it's possible. We've had that happen. And, my heart goes out to the people that happen to and their loved ones. And it has happened, kind of a lot. But statistically speaking, not really. That same flight where maybe something went wrong, how many tens of thousands or even millions of people have flown that same airline, that same flight route, that same time of day and made it just fine. The probability of dropping out of the sky in an airplane is amazingly small. Or lots of other issues about probability. Sometimes when we get anxious about things and we say, oh no, this will happen, the odds of that happening are so low that we're pretty safe to ignore them. We don't want to be foolhardy. We don't want to drive 100 miles an hour in a 35 zone with no seatbelt and, after we've had a fifth of vodka. I don't mean being foolhardy. What I mean is about understanding fears and a certain concept of reality. And this is what clients do in cognitive therapy. Sometimes we really look at what are your fears and we assess them and evaluate them. If the fear is judged to be strong, like, you're 100 pounds overweight and you smoke 3 packs a day and you're afraid you're going to die of a heart attack, okay, that's a pretty strong fear. We might really want to look at the behavioral aspects of weight loss and healthy eating and quitting smoking and all the things that are about self-care. But other fears are out of proportion to the threat that they actually make. Like if we're living with HIV or another type of health condition, we know that statistically it is a threat. And we have to respond to that fear because we know from statistics that we have to respond to the fear or bad outcomes might be more likely. And I think October and Halloween are not just about life and death, but about all of our fears. We might fear illness or accidents, but what other fears do we face? Ones that are a little more subjective. Are we afraid to enter a relationship with someone new because we've been hurt in the past. I see that in so many guys. They don't let themselves love and trust and even have sex with abandon because they've been hurt by the bad behavior of other people in the past who've been dishonest or abusive. Are we afraid to date because someone might reject us because of our HIV status? And I've had that twice this week with guys in my office, and it's 2019, and with undetectable equals untransmissible and TASP and PrEP, that stigma about HIV is going down. But in the course of my 27-year career, that has been a big fear. Guys, gay men, they have an irrational fear of how HIV is transmitted, usually out of ignorance about how it's transmitted, or more importantly, how it's not transmitted. And, or just being afraid to date because of afraid of rejection. If somebody rejects us for dating because we're HIV positive in 2019, with all that we know about, HIV virus transmission prevention, that person might as well wear a sign on their forehead, like that game on your iPhone that has the word, and just ignorance. Do we really want to be dating somebody who's that ignorant? I think that would, their ignorance would come to bite us in other ways, even if we somehow got around their HIV issue. Or, some of the other things. People, I'm afraid to date a cop because he might get shot on the job. It's possible. It's just not likely among all police officers in all of the world over. Sometimes we have to tame our fears, like training a new puppy who doesn't know how to walk on a leash, or, trying to somehow tame a wild animal. That's controversial. I don't really believe in taming wild animals, but you know what I mean. It's sometimes we have to really get a fear almost like it's something that's out of control that we need to calm it down and bring it back into reasonable, rational discussion. Are we afraid to accept a new job because, we might fear what it's like to work at a new place? Are we afraid to try a medication because we're not sure what side effects it might have? I see this all the time, especially with psych meds. Oh, my friend took Zoloft and he couldn't get it up anymore, and so I've been depressed and can't get out of bed for 2 weeks, but I'm afraid to try an antidepressant because what if my dick doesn't work? It's like, well, if you try a medication and it gives you intolerable side effects, like sexual side effects, then you try something else, and you talk with your psychiatrist, and you try something else, and you get off the old medication that's intolerable. But to have a fear of not even trying it when you've been in the throes of depression or anxiety or other kinds of symptoms, OCD, ADD, whatever, that's letting your fear get in the way of living your best life, which we really have to have a short amount of patience for. It's important to have patience in general, but it's also important not to kind of coddle our own neurosis, like irrational fears. We really want to take a hard stance with that and say, look, no more. I'm not going to let irrational fears get in the way of living my best life. I'm going to really put my foot down about that. Are we afraid to speak our minds to power? That's part of activism. Are we afraid to speak to our insensitive landlord who makes us live in slum-like conditions, or to confront a boss who overworks us or does something unethical? I've seen a lot of that in my time about bosses, especially in the nonprofit world, who were embezzling or, doing something completely illegal. Or to speak our minds to a doctor who says, oh, well, side effects, just live with it, give it more time. It's like, you first, buddy. We have to speak up to doctors who are doing us wrong because it's their job to help us. And even therapists, actually, I might add. You don't have to say, fuck you, buddy. But you might say, you know what, I'm not getting what I need from you. Can we please talk about that? Not being afraid to speak up. Can we speak up to our partner and say, you know what, I really have a problem with this. Can we talk about this? This is really bothering me. Can we speak our minds and speak up to a sibling and say, you know what, I really think the way that you're handling mom's process of going into a nursing home is not right. Can we talk as a family about some alternatives? Speaking up to a parent and saying, you know what, you telling me how to raise my children is not okay. Or to a teacher or a professor and saying, you know what, the use of a slur in class is really not okay with me. Or a neighbor who's playing music too loud at 3 a.m. You know, we don't lose our rights to stand up for ourselves just because we might be part of the LGBT community. I see that. Or we don't also lose the right to stand up for ourselves if we're somehow in one of the out groups, you know, if we're a person of color or we're obese or we have a disability. We don't lose those rights just because we're not white and straight and rich and able-bodied and all this other kind of stuff. Everybody is empowered to overcome their fears and speak their truth. And confronting these paralyzing fears that, you know, immobilizes some people into a kind of a stagnant misery, we want to be able to manage those fears and even eliminate them with just a few questions from informed reason. You know, if you're afraid of something, afraid of doing something or trying something, ask yourself realistically, how likely are your fears to come true? What about trying it just a little bit? Who can support you in this? Who's on your side? Who's on your team that can support you and say, yeah, I think moving to Chicago for this new job to double your salary might be a really good idea. Pack warm clothes, but, you know, you can also afford to go to vacation to tropical destinations, maybe, if you double your salary. You know, so who can support you in your fears? I think a lot of times a therapist can and kind of say, look, it's just a dinner date. Why don't just go out with the guy? If you hate him, it's just dinner. If you like him, it's a good time. Another thing you can ask yourself is, what do you need to know about this situation to make a better judgment that you're afraid of? I go through this a lot with some of my own medical stuff, where I don't know what to do until I get a lot of information. I humble myself enough to say, I don't know. I don't know the facts. I don't know the nuances of this situation. I need to have more research data. I need to have more anecdotal information from friends who have been in similar situations. I need better advice. I need to look things up online, but then also be critical of the source that I'm looking at. Another thing you can think about confronting the things that you're afraid of is, who can teach you about it? You know, can you find somebody with expertise? Can you find somebody who already lives in Chicago and say, you know, I'm thinking of moving from LA to Chicago for a job that doubles my salary that sounds really great, but I'm afraid of the weather there. What's it really like to live with that awful weather? But, you know, could I put up with, no offense to people in Chicago, by the way, but, you know, could I put up with the disadvantages of a new opportunity in order to have the advantages? And how can I really learn to make an informed decision, not one based on fear, but one based on the information that we gather for ourselves through our own efforts? The other thing is looking at, you know, what about the fears the other way? What's the risk of not trying something? If you don't take a new job, how do you expect to ever grow in your profession or in your earning power? Or if you don't take a medication or go out on a date, how are you ever going to be healthy? Or how are you ever going to find a partner? Or how are you ever going to get your sexual needs met? Or how are you ever going to do the things that you want to do with your life if you can't realistically manage your fears of doing or not doing something? So Halloween is a time for putting on masks and embodying our fears and really embracing them, looking them in the eye with blood and bones and skulls and, you know, all of that stuff. And then knowing that when it's over, we can take the masks off again and put away the skeletons for another year, and we're going to be okay. So in the words of Danny Elfman in Oingo Boingo's classic song, Dead Men's Party, which a lot of us might hear tonight, don't be afraid, it's only me. Don't be afraid, of what you cannot see. So enjoy Halloween, and I'll see you next time.